most British episode of Ground Pass ever. Okay, maybe a slight exaggeration. I think you need another very British person on this podcast, but you will notice that what is technically a mini-pod, Anastasia's not here. As I said on the last episode, Anastasia's taking a little bit of a break from recording. And given I'm in the UK and grass and UK tennis are so synonymous, it makes sense for me to take us through these next couple of weeks on the Pro Tennis Tour. I just want to give maybe a little bit of an introduction to grass for those who may be a bit newer to tennis. In terms of, obviously, we talked about it last week with Anastasia. Grass is the original tennis surface. Don't forget, the original name for the sport was lawn tennis, because you played it on lawn, because it was played by rich people back in the day. Much like the modern sport of cricket and golf, expanded well beyond those routes to be much more accessible in comparison, anyway. Now, the tennis world has clearly evolved. Grass has now gone from being where tennis is mostly played 100 years ago to being only played on the Pro Tour for 1 month of the year, apart from maybe sporadically in Australia on the lower reaches of the tour. Typically, everyone focuses on grass for a month of the year, starting here, straight after the French Open, with tournaments in the UK, in Germany, in the Netherlands, Spain, and even one more in the USA after Wimbledon. For the last time this year, actually, before moving back to playing on hard courts, which is where most people would probably recognise tennis as being played now. Much more easy to maintain, obviously. Having to maintain all those lawns and things is quite costly, but grass does represent a very different challenge to the modern players. And one of the reasons for that is the bounce. The way the ball bounces on grass is much lower compared to other surfaces. There's a really great video on YouTube out there somewhere explaining the differences between surfaces. In a nutshell, hard courts will have a high bounce with varying kinds of speed, depending on the conditions of where it's being played, maybe what exactly it's made of. Clay will always be high and slow. It might speed up a bit indoors or in a high-level atmosphere. Grass is always low and fast. So that's just different. And so players who maybe put a bit of spin on the ball or who are able to make the ball bounce lower are going to get more of an advantage off the surface. Not only that, but the way you move on grass is very different. You can imagine if anyone's played any kind of sport that involves playing on grass, be it football in Europe, American football in America, in the US, even if you play cricket or baseball, you will know what it's like trying to run on grass. If it's slippy, it can be slippy when it's mildly wet, especially first thing in the morning, and even on a nice day, you cut it short enough, you've still got to try and get the traction on it. And the grass is cut very, very short on tennis courts. So controlling your ability to move from side to side is critical. You may see more players getting injured on this surface. That's an additional challenge, and that's why you may see some players only do well for 1 month of the year. This is where players like, on the women's side, Hule Niemeyer always comes alive on grass because her ball striking is so fast and flat. On the men's side, you've got players like Tim van Riethoven, who didn't make it very far, or Matteo Berretini on the men's side, really comes alive on grass because of his serve, because of his forehand. His game just works so well on the surface. And it's where the Brits come alive as well, but we'll come back to that. But yes, there's your kind of quick introduction to grass. Here's a fun bit of history trivia, because you always get it, just because this has reminded me of it. But do you know how the Wimbledon tournament started. It was started as a means of raising money to buy a roller for the croquet lawn, because the people who run Wimbledon is the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club. And what they didn't expect when they launched this one-off singles tournament to raise some money by selling tickets, that this lawn tennis thing would just take off, and croquet would be this fun little sport that you might find that no one really knows how to play anymore. I do believe that croquet is still somewhere on the grounds, but yeah, the club very quickly realised that they were onto something here with promoting this lawn tennis sport. So I will leave you with that. Grass and tennis will always go hand in hand, and there will always be heritage on that surface. And I will probably try and give you a little bit more Wimbledon history tidbits as we go throughout the next couple of weeks. But Nick, why are we dwelling so far in the past? What's happened? Well, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of who's won the tournaments this week. I am recording this on Sunday, June 16th. We now have the results. The results are in. Stuttgart Open, Jack Draper wins his first ever ATP tournament, beating Matteo Berretini in the final. On the women's side, in Nottingham, another Brett Fine success. Katie Boulter winning Nottingham for the second year running on home soil, taking down Emma Raducanu in the semi-finals and Karolina Pliskova in the final on the same day, because pretty much everywhere was affected by rain, but Nottingham very badly, to the point where they were basically had to play the semis and the final on the same day, and they were constantly running behind. It's amazing they got that tournament done. On the men's side as well, there was a tournament, actually for the men and the women, going on in the Netherlands, in Rosmalen, or s-Hertogenbosch. I need to double check the pronunciation of that. Probably should have done that before I started recording. Apologies to any Dutch people listening. Please do tell us how to pronounce the name of your wonderful town and your wonderful tournament, because this is where the tennis world pays attention. But yeah, men and women at that tournament, and it was won by honorary Brit Alex DeMinaur. Honorary Brit because he's dating Katie Boulter, so this is the second week of the year that they've done the couple double. Sadly, he didn't make it in time to watch her match in Nottingham. He probably could have if he found the right flight, but it probably would have been a bit of a tight turnaround. And the women's event was won by Ludmila Samsonova, who's another player who tends to do really well on grass. Her game really works on that surface, and she's very comfortable. Those are your results. I think the champions that we're probably most excited about, I am most excited about, are the Brits. I'm going to go into them a little bit more in a minute, but I want to talk about what's been really generating the buzz at this week. And it's actually been on the women's tour, because, well, we'll start with Grasaka, or Grass Osaka. Naomi Osaka is still showing that she's returning as a force in tennis. She has bounced back from that narrow defeat to Iga Swiatek and Roland Garros, only to suffer another narrow defeat to another Grand Slam champion, Bianca Andreescu, in Rosmalen. And it has to be said, she did look pretty good this tournament, and there's no reason to suggest that why she can't continue this trend. I mean, Danielle Collins narrowly lost to Iga Swiatek in Australia, and look where she's at now. Naomi Osaka arguably has a higher ceiling and has been tipped for years to do well on grass. I'll be very interested to see what happens next for Naomi, but certainly this has been what's been generating a lot of the excitement. That wasn't until Andreescu beat her. Bianca Andreescu, this is only her second tournament back. In her two tournaments back, she's reached the third round of a Grand Slam and the final of a WTA 250. She's already 6 matches won, 2 lost for the year. That's a really good return. She probably ran out of gas a little bit in that final against Samsonova. Maybe injury playing a part, and that's been something that we've had to get used to with Bianca Andreescu's story. Obviously, won the US Open back in 2019. If you don't know who she is, she's Canadian. And 2019 was a year where she was either, when she entered a tournament, she would either win it or pull out injured. But she was showing an intense level of that year of competitiveness, fieriness. She beat Serena Williams twice that season, which tells you something. And went toe-to-toe with Osaka again in Beijing, actually. A match that was referenced back when they played each other again this year in Rojmala. Bianca Andreescu is a player who has so many options, is clearly incredibly talented, has a lot of shots in her arsenal, can get a racket on anything, fights for every point. Her matches are always roller coasters. I think that's something to bear in mind with watching her, that when you watch her, you're going to get a roller coaster. Her level fluctuates a lot during matches. She can drop sets, sometimes her opponent will figure something out and she takes a while to cotton onto it, but she will never give up. She pushed Subzonova to the limit in that final. She broke back in the deciding set, couldn't maintain it enough to get what would have been her first title in 5 years. So yeah, Andreescu's back. And I tell you what, it's been a good week to be a US Open champion, because Emma Raducanu was on form as well, reaching the semi-finals in Nottingham and narrowly losing to Katie Boulter in what was a very even match, at least to start with. Emma winning the first set 15-13 on a tie break. They then have to go and break overnight because it was getting too dark and damp. They come back out. Katie Boulter comes out swinging. Emma's probably not feeling it, and Katie Boulter wins. But Emma still fought pretty hard, and the final set was a little bit topsy-turvy. So, great result for Emma, losing to the eventual champion. Katie Boulter's not a bad loss for anyone, and is positive signs as she returns to grass for the first time in 2 years. Didn't play here last year because of her injuries and her surgery that she had. Hoping to make an impact on the grass, and maybe go deep at Wimbledon, where obviously she's got a pretty good record. 4th round on her debut, 2nd round the following year. Also, another US Open champion had a pretty good week was Iga Swiatek, who isn't playing any grass court warm-ups before Wimbledon. She announced that she wasn't going to play Berlin, which is happening next week, and instead went to Liverpool to watch a Taylor Swift concert. And there are photos of social media and videos of her social media dancing along to Shake It Off, and then a photo of her mid-cry having received a congratulations letter from Taylor Swift on winning the French Open. So confirmed Swiftie is Iga Swiatek, and even if she wasn't competing this week and winning, as she usually does, she would probably say that she had a pretty good time this week. So sadly, no real updates on our other US Open champions in the field, Sloane Stephens, Coco Gauff, Venus Williams. But if we get any, then we'll let you know. But yeah, so there you go. That's it's been a good week for those sort of champions, as it were, and a good week for the Brits. As I said, Jack Draper, champion in Stuttgart, played incredibly well, served really strongly. He played a perfect grass court game and took down the grass court master Matteo Berretini from a set down in the final in what was a knife edge turnaround, because Berrettini could have got him in that match, but Jack just got better and better and better. He didn't play Wimbledon last year, but he's starting to show why he's Britain's new hope as Andy Murray fades out. Katie Boulter as well. I think both Draper and Boulter have made good cases for them both to be seeded for Wimbledon, which is good, because Wimbledon is in danger of not having a British player seeded for the first time in either singles event for the first time since 2007. But yeah, Katie made a statement win by not only beating Emma Raducanu, but beating Karin Pliskova, who Wimbledon runner-up in 2021, in a tougher field compared to the one that she beat last year. So Katie is very much on the march. She's going to Birmingham this week, and she's planning on playing all the British grass court warm-up events. Aside from the Brits who won titles, actually no, there is another Brit who won a title this week, and I wanted to shout him out, and his name is Jacob Fernley, who you might not have heard of before. He's 22 years old, and he is currently trying to make a career in pro tennis, having come through the US college system playing for TCU. And the reason it's significant is he won the men's event in Nottingham, which was a challenger event, beating Charles Broome in an all-British final. But yeah, Fernley came through. He beat Jerry Shang. He beat Paul Jubb, another Brit, Matteo Berretini. Very, very good result for Fernley, who may have just given himself a chance of a wild card at Wimbledon as a result of this. So another British success at Nottingham. And by the way, if you are British and listening to this, I hope this encourages you to go and check out Nottingham next year. It's going to be at a slightly different point in the calendar. It's going to be kind of a week later compared to it, but like just keep an eye on the dates. Like Nottingham, if you want to go and watch world-class tennis and you don't live near London, Nottingham is perfect for that. And if you want to see British tennis succeed, judging by recent years, you're going to get a Brit doing pretty well at this tournament, even if they don't win it, men or women. I think we've had a British champion at the event in the Challenger for the men for the last few years now. Dan Evans has traditionally done well here, although he lost to Broome, as did Lloyd Harris. Another Brit who did well, Billy Harris, beat Yao Fonseca in the round of 16, a name that you'll probably hear more of. Another British player that you'll hear more of, Jack Pennington-Jones, beat Cameron Norrie, well-established former Indian Wales champion in the round of 16. Surprisingly, came from a set down against Cameron Norrie. And again, Jack is another sort of college player who's now trying to make it pro. Great advert for college tennis, as well as up-and-coming British in the men's tournament. And as a result of these, Jack Draper is now the new highest-ranked British male player, the British number one. Actually, Katie Boulter is still the women's number one. So, again, lots for the British media and British fans to get hyped about. Because now it's time to look ahead to the tennis that's happening. Because there's 4 main tour events going on this week. 3 of them are 500 level events. 1 is a 250. We'll start with Berlin, because I've mentioned it a few times. Berlin is a WTA 500 that's happening, and 9 out of the 10 best women's players in the world are going to be there this week. Coco Gauff is the top seed after Iga Swiatek decided she wasn't going to play in the end. Maria Sabalenka is the 2nd seed. Elena Rebecca is the 3rd seed, and so on. Big results here for anyone who comes through this draw. And Berlin is one to watch because since it's come back onto the tour as a grass court event, it's shown itself to be very relevant for Wimbledon form. Last year, Marketa Vondrousova reached the quarterfinals, did pretty well. She won the title. Ons Jabeur won the tournament in 2022, got to the final. Elena Rebecca didn't play the event, but she is now that year. And then since it came back in 2021, the champions always made at least the 4th round. I said Berlin's coming back to the tour. It was originally a clay court event. It used to be a 1,000 event, a Masters 1,000 event, up until the late 2000s, when the restructure kind of replaced it with Madrid. But Berlin was one of the premier French Open warm-up events on the clay. And then a couple of years back, they decided to bring it back as a grass court event, as a premium Wimbledon warm-up event. So yeah, there's your little bit of history there. But yeah, critical warm-up event for the women. If you want to have an idea of who's going to do well at Wimbledon, watch that event. The draw is stacked anyway. You've got crazy first rounds, including Naomi Osaka's playing Zheng Qinwen in round 1. That is insane. That's just one example. Victoria Azarenka's playing Maria Sakkari. All the top players are clashing with each other off the bat. The top 4 get a bye, but it doesn't matter. Like, that event's going to be worth watching from start to finish. Another event that's pretty stacked is Queen's Club, which is happening in London. And that is an ATP event, 500. We're going to be hopping to and from Germany quite a bit in this description here. Carlos Alcaraz is the top seed, but he does not have an easy first round draw because he's got Franz Cerundolo in round 1 and then potentially Jack Draper in round 2. But Carlos is the top seed. Alex DeMinaur is the second seed. So there's a little bit of a gap. There's not as many top 10 players, but there's a heck of a lot of grass court players in there. And also Queen's Club is probably played on much more similar grass to Wimbledon compared to any other tournament. Unsurprisingly, because they're both in London. And actually, another bit of history trivia for you, because this is the kind of podcast I run. Queen's Club is one of the oldest tournaments in tennis. It was started in 1881. It's the same age as the US Open. Wasn't always called the US Open, of course, but I could get into that history. That's another day. But yeah, the Queen's Club has been around and hosting premier tennis tournaments for as long as the US created its first premier tennis tournament. So its biggest tennis tournament. So there you go. So little nugget there. So the Queen's Club has got a lot of history to it. It does feel like a club tournament when you go. And it's pretty stacked. You've got, again, lots of Brits in the mix. Andy Murray's playing what probably will be his final Queen's Club event. He's won it 5 times. Unlikely to win it again, but you never know. Taylor Fritz is playing. Tommy Paul is playing. I think both of them have very good chances of doing well here. If you're an American fan, finally doing something for the Americans on this show. But yeah, DeMinaur's there. Grigor Dimitrov is there. It's a lot going on. Also a lot going on is Halle, which is the final 500 event. We're back in Germany. It's the ATP still. And Jannik Sinner's the top seed. So Sinner is... Sinner Kraus have split up for now. And it creates the tantalising prospect of them both winning the key Wimbledon warm-up tournaments and coming into Wimbledon with insane momentum. And they will be the 2 favourites for the title, regardless of the outcome. Sinner's got a bit of a tricky first couple of rounds, but when you consider that he's in a draw with Alexander Zverev, Daniel Medvedev, Hubert Hurkacz, Matteo Berrettini, Andrei Rublev, more top 10 players have gone to Halle. And Halle is a tournament with a lot of ambitions. It's a wannabe Wimbledon event. It's got one of the biggest stadiums you will see for a 500 out there. They really go all out. They seem to have literally modelled the whole thing after Centre Court. It's quite spectacular. You may get frustrated with the shadow that the court casts over the court, but that's nothing new if you're an established tennis fan. Halle, it's an interesting event because it's traditionally the event where Roger Federer used to warm up for Wimbledon and he used to win it. But anyone else who's won it has never actually done that well at Wimbledon. We jokingly refer to it as the Halle curse, which Alexander Bublik did break last year. And there's reasons for that. I think Halle plays, the ball moves even quicker on Halle compared to Wimbledon, which is possibly why. But yeah, that's one to keep an eye on anyway if you want to see some top players in action. But your attention's going to be spread pretty thin this week. As we jump back to Britain, because there's one other tournament, the WTA 250 happening in Birmingham. And whilst a lot of the top players are in Berlin, we still have some key names in Birmingham. We've got Jelena Ostapenko as the top seed. Barbora Krejcikova is playing. She's the second seed. We've got other Grand Slam champions in the mix. Sloane Stephens, Caroline Wozniacki, Leylah Fernandez, the former US Open champion, is playing, as is Mira Andreeva. Yes, this is where the teenage sensation is choosing to warm up. Unless, of course, she's pulled out, and maybe this is completely wrong. You might want to check that. I thought she was, maybe she's not. But yeah, still some big names going, and obviously all the Brits. Katie Boulter's going to be here, Harriet Dart, Heather Watson. They're all going to be playing Birmingham, and this is more of a heads up. I think those who were maybe hoping to get some grass court momentum under their belt, this is a really good opportunity for them, where they don't have to try and trip over some top players to do it. Try and push some top players aside. No disrespect to Ostapenko or Krejcikova or anyone of their quality. It's more like who's currently high in the rankings. Yeah, and this is where I sort of say, if you are British, there are still tickets available for Birmingham. Queen's is sold out, so there's no point in trying to get there, but you should still be able to get some tickets for Birmingham. So go and check out if you can. if you listen to this in time, see what's left. It's usually a really good day out. I've been the last couple of years. I'm not going this year, but it's a great event and worth checking out. It's going to be shifting its place in the calendar again next year, but worth checking out and see if you want to keep coming back, especially if you're in the area. And actually, this is again shout out to any British people listening. These smaller tournaments, Wimbledon is not the only place you can get tennis, especially given how hard it is to get hold of tickets. If you want to see good quality quick tennis, get to see some pros up close and some big tennis names, it's well worth checking out. Nottingham, Birmingham, Queen's Club, and Eastbourne, which is happening just the week before Wimbledon. But we'll get there when we get there. I think that's enough to go on for. This has been your Grass Pass mini-pod. Maybe that name won't take off. It's your Grounds Pass mini-pod, Grass Season, Part 1. I'll be back next week to round up everything to do with the tour, give you some more historical tidbits, and if you have any questions about grass or anything tennis related, any stories that you want to make sure get covered, please just let us know on Threads, on X, on Instagram. Send us an email. Send us a voice note. I'd love to hear that. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you as always.